Merry Christmas.
Richard Digance is a TV legend, not only a folk singer, a singer-songwriter, poet, comedian, radio presenter, author, Countdown Dictionary Corner regular and brilliant performer. Richard to me has always been kind, approachable, helpful with advice and generous with his time. He literally has been there and done it, and over the next hour or so, if you haven't read his books yet, you will enjoy hearing his anecdotes and behind the scenes of an incredibly successful career. Please welcome Richard Digance. Eyes and teeth. Today, Richard Digance is here.
Hello, Steve.
Mr. Digance, sir, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
You're all right. Very good, thank you. Richard Digance with an A, not an E. I made that mistake once of writing your name in a card, I think, and I put an E instead of an A. And I apologise about that because if you're going to be...
Yeah, but you actually put the E in Richard and not Digance, which was a worry.
Oh, yeah. I did not. I didn't, did I? No, I wouldn't do that. I know too many Richards.
I'm just trying to tell people you're stupid, but you're not, are you?
I am if I did that. So thank you so much for talking to us, Richard.
Pleasure, Steve. Pleasure.
You've kept us entertained with guitar lessons. I thank you.
Yeah.
And yeah, you've done a lot. You tried to fill your head with things that you could do. Have you got any signs of the next gig, Richard?
No.
Nothing yet, no. I mean, because you go out and you do your folk festivals and you do theatre gigs, which you put on yourself. And literally, this morning, I just discovered this fantastic hour of you in concert at the Brighton Dome. And it's such a brilliant show of you at your best. And if people want to see Richard Digance and become a fan instantly, watch this Brighton Dome thing that is on YouTube right now. I think you maybe filmed this in the 90s. Do you remember that show?
Yeah, I just don't know whether it was the 1890s or the 1990s.
It probably feels that way.
As old Jeffro once said, I remember when the Dead Sea didn't even have a headache. Yeah, been around so long. But yeah, I think it was the 90s, Steve. I'm a bit fake. Yes, hang on. I think it was 1993.
Was it? Wow. And I think that's, if I remember rightly, you were on TV constantly. You were a guest spotting. You were, I'd say, on the Desert Connor show. You had your own TV show back then, and specials that you used to do. Did you have the best of variety years? I think from sort of 80s and 90s. Obviously, it faded. Yeah. It faded quite quickly, didn't it? But 70s to the 90s, I think, was the best of TV variety, and I think you had a lot of those good years. Do you think that?
I think so. Yeah, and I came into telly sort of through the back door, really, because I've really always been a musician, and I never expected to even be on television. To be honest, it wasn't one of my great ambitions. It sort of fell into my lap in a strange way.
Yeah.
I was a radio presenter actually on Capital Radio in London.
Okay.
And I used to do a sort of a through the night show called Midnight Special. Although I wanted a daytime slot, I remember the boss, who was called Joe Sandilands. I take no prisoners when I talk, Steve. Joe Sandilands said I didn't have the right accent for being a daytime presenter on Capital, a London station, and I was born in London. But they wanted this sort of laid-back West Coast Californian,
Wow.
And so two of us who were through the night, I was followed by another no-hoper called Philip Schofield. and both of us failed to get daytime slots on Capital.
Yes, Schofield will never get a daytime slot with that voice, will he? What's happened to him?
Yeah, what's happened to him? And anyway, so I'm on this through the night, playing all my vintage blues stuff, and it was really nice because I used to get like little messages from Elton John and people saying, "Oh, I love the music you play. It's not top 20 stuff, it's raw, it's New Orleans and blah 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 blah." Yeah,
and people wouldn't have heard it really on a proper sort of national radio show. They wouldn't have heard what you're playing, and you're introducing music.
And although the ratings weren't sort of going through the roof, they were still good. We in those days on Capital, we used to get about 85,000 people listening every week, and so you're talking from midnight onwards. And then I was doing the folk programme as well, which was really enjoyable for me because I came through the folk clubs. But there it was. I was a musician talking about music, blah 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 blah. And then one day I hasten to add, although Capital Radio was in this massive, great tower block called Euston Tower near Euston Station in London.
Yeah, wow.
I was the only person in the building. There was nobody else there apart from a security guard on the ground floor. And so if the phone rang, you answered it yourself. If there was a special thing you had to read out, which in them days came through telex, you had to, by regulation, read it out. And I always used to dread that something would go wrong and I wouldn't know what to do.
Yeah, because no one's vetting them, are they? You're reading them straight away, and no one goes, you can't read that one. But so, did you have to...
And all that rubbish people used to say about 4 seconds delay and all that, that wasn't true. I was live, and I was in London twice a week, talking to London, and then the phone rang, and it was a comedian who I'd heard of but didn't really know much about, called Jim Davidson.
Wow.
Now, you're talking about two people coming from two very, very different walks of life, you know.
Yes.
You've got the comic, who was very big at the time, doing the Generation Game, etc., and you've got the folkie in his jeans, you know, talking about blues music from Mississippi and so on.
Yes.
And Jim Davidson actually said, I'm literally passing Euston Tower. Can I come in? And I went, yeah. And I knew very little about him, Steve, to be honest. You know, he wasn't really my sort of cup of tea, to be honest.
Yeah.
But anyway, I had to play a long track and run down to the foyer to let him in. That's how isolated I was. And anyway, he came up and he got on the phones and he was very amicable with the public, you know, Jim Davidson. And we had a great session, you know, and he said to me as he was leaving, he was with me for about 2 hours on air, and he said, do you know I do one of your songs? And I didn't even know Davidson sang, you know. And I went, really?
No, I didn't know.
And he went, yeah, he said, I do one of your songs called Drag Queen Blues. And I went, oh, right, okay. And that was that. And off he went. And I thought, oh, that was quite pleasant. And it must have been a few days later. And he said, I really enjoyed that chat. And I said, thank you, you know, glad you did. And he said, would you like to come on tour with me? It was a tricky one, Steve, because I was employed by Capital, so I'd have to take holidays, you know.
Yeah.
It wasn't a case of, I can do a British tour. Anyway, it was only a matter of months, and I ended up in the Falkland Islands with Jim. And I came home and I started doing some shows with him, literally taking my holiday time. It was Jim, actually, who really flew my flag at that time at Thames Television and said, oh, you've got to give this guy, you know, a show, blah, 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 blah. And Jim was very powerful, of course.
Brilliant, yeah.
And,
I mean, he'd done New Faces, obviously, quite a few years before that meeting.
Yeah, he had, yeah. But, you know, to be honest, Steve, I didn't really watch a lot of telly. I listened to music and I certainly didn't really watch New Faces, you know.
No, but you're doing the radio show. How many nights a week were you doing that? But you're doing it from midnight, so you have to get ready for work about 10 o'clock. So your nights really were taken up, and your daytimes you must have been sleeping.
Yeah, well, I used to do a gig on the way in sometimes.
Really?
I'd do a folk club on the way into Capital.
Brilliant.
And then race through London at a rate of knots to be on air at midnight, and I used to go through till 4.
Yeah, wow.
And then Philip Schofield used to go from 4 till 7 when the breakfast show came on.
Yeah.
So we were right in the wilderness of very popular with insomniacs and burglars. That's what I used to say.
When you go shopping in the supermarket about 1 or 2 in the morning when you're back from a gig, and you just look at, is he a murderer? Is he, you know, are they criminals? You know, and they're probably looking at us thinking, is he an entertainer?
Yeah.
So,
Why's he got a dummy on his arm? Yeah.
to reach the magazines.
So anyway, what happened was that Thames did actually take it up on his say-so, and I did my first TV special before I was sort of guesting on other people's shows, which was really round the wrong way, you know, how you do it.
Yeah.
So there was me getting my first TV special. Capital didn't like that very much, you know, because they owned me, if you like.
Yeah, you're still signed with them.
People like Kenny Everett the big
Okay.
names to do telly, they were never struck. You know, they sort of made life a bit difficult, and so I hit a bit of a crossroads,
Yeah.
and I thought, what do I do? I'd been offered a series, what was called TVS in those days, Television South.
I remember.
Yep, and that was Greg Dyke, and I had the choice of accepting TV series or staying with Capital, and obviously I made the choice that you would have made or anybody else. I slung in my job and joined TVS, and then when Greg Dyke left TVS to go to London Weekend Television, a bit like football managers, they take their favourite players.
Yeah.
And Greg Dyke took me and Bobby Davro from TVS to LWT.
Okay.
And there I sat for 11 years, just making my own shows and having a great time of it all.
Eyes and teeth. Well, that's an amazing launch, really, from that. I mean, it must have been really hard to give up the radio show, which sounded like a passion, but playing the music that you wanted to, but then you found this new fame, really, doing the comedy and the music on television. But it's so nice that it paid off in them 11 years.
I think so, because I didn't know the TV world at all, and you know me very well. You know, I never made tons of friends in the world of television. I'd never done a working men's club in my life, you know.
Wow.
And the way they talked about what they'd done, I'd never done any of it. I'd just got my guitar out and sung songs, you know.
Yeah.
And so I felt very strange. I felt out of place and a little bit of a trespasser on the circuits of, you know, and you go and do the comedian-y type things, and there's the Mannings and that lot, you know, which I could not relate to at all.
Sure.
All bantering the best joke around and all laughing at each other hilariously. And I would just sit there thinking...
Have you heard of this folk song? Yeah.
Yeah, bung me on and I'll sing you a song.
Yeah.
And so it was a very strange baptism, but I stuck with it for as long as I could. Did 11 years there. But yes, I did miss radio. You're absolutely right. And, you know, if someone said to me right now, I've done the odd thing, you know, I've done sort of BBC Radio Devon. I did a folk series for them just a couple of years ago. If people offered me to do a radio show, I'd jump at it because it's how I started and it's the media that I love. Mainly because it's a bit like what you do. You're asking people to use their imagination.
Yes.
You know, you're not a stand-up, I'm not a stand-up. But what we are saying is, believe us, you know.
Yeah. You want to invite them into our world.
Yeah, absolutely. And if they don't follow you, Steve Hewlett is dead. Richard Digance is dead, you know. And so the whole art of imagination, for me, came from radio. The only stipulation I ever made, and I was never allowed to make many, but the stipulation I made was that if we had guests, I would play with them. So therefore, when Brian May of Queen came on my show, we did a duet, and I was an honorary member of Status Quo and the Moody Blues, you know, and stuff like that. What dreams are made of, if you like.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Do you have any of them recordings still from them radio shows? Or I know it was live, wasn't it? But do you keep any of those recordings?
I can't do anything with them because obviously the copyright is with
Yeah.
LWT. But, you know, when people say, what are your great moments, you know, I do have great moments, the same as you do. And one was definitely playing a duet with Brian May because, and you'd like to think he felt the same, wouldn't you?
Yes, yeah. I'm sure he did.
And I think coming out of TV, there are other things I did where I look back and go, that was a good one. I worked with Steve Martin, for example, in America.
Wow.
And they warned me. Now, Steve Martin being the huge, mega movie star he is, I hasten to add, he's probably one of the shyest guys I ever worked with. And phenomenally well-mannered. You know,
that's strange to hear that.
An impeccable gent, if you like.
Yes.
And I was warned before I went with him that he had the strangest encore that I was ever going to see. And it was true because he used to take the audience out into the street and show them how to steal a car. And I'd never seen anything like that before. And so through the TV era and allowing, the album to sort of sell a bit better, I could go and do America, where I hasten to add I died on my arse, but at least I went there and did it,
Did they not get your humour or your accent?
No.
What do you think it was?
Oh, I think they like the English accent, Steve, but I'm not sure they got my dry sort of humour too well.
Yeah.
But there again, I got to play dueling banjos with Steve Martin every night, so, it was a nice feat for me.
Beautiful.
And something I never ever thought I would do in my wildest dreams as a radio presenter. It was 11 years there, and thoroughly enjoyed myself, I hasten to add, but being relatively, I was going to say lonely, I was never lonely, but I was carving my own path, if you like. I didn't fit. And LWT at the time, you're talking about Cilla Black, you're talking about Barrymore, Free of a Kind, and all that lot. And they were wrapped up in comedy, whereas I became more engrossed in comedy music.
Yeah.
And the only other person I can think of, just off the top of my head, who was doing anything like it was Victoria Wood.
Music and comedy do go so well together if you get it right. You've got Tim Minchin these days, or back then you had Victor Borg on pianos, Victoria Wood.
Bill Bailey to an extent.
Yeah, Bernie Flint. You ever worked with Bernie Flint on guitar?
I remember him,
Yeah. And there's this Canadian I've seen called Phil Nicol who does the guitar as well. He's really sort of in your face. And Izzy Sutty, I think you're one of the first, I think, that was doing so much of the guitar and comedy at the same time. Your comedy is first class and your guitar playing is sublime. Put them together and you've got Richard Digance. It's just brilliant. How did you start doing the two together so well? Because it works perfectly.
There's a very, very simple answer, Steve, actually, which is the folk scene. Now, when I talk about the folk scene, I'm talking about the late 60s into the 70s,
Okay.
And it was thriving in Britain, mainly for students, mainly for thinking people, and we had the likes of David Bowie. He ran a folk club in Beckenham, in what was then Kent. We had people like Elvis Costello, Eric Clapton. It was Mark Knopfler, of course, with his brother David. There was a very vibrant scene going on.
Yeah.
And my hero was a guy called Ralph McTell, who wrote Streets of London. And it didn't take me long to realise that I didn't really have the voice that lot had. I've never been the best singer in Europe. I never claimed to be. My sort of wake-up call was a little bit before that, when I was at college. I went to college in Glasgow, and in Glasgow was a bit of a rough house, and so being a Londoner, I used to sort of hide away, and the place I could find was the local folk club, where you sat in a darkened room with candles on beer barrels, and I loved it. I thought it was brilliant.
Sounds great.
The resident at this club, which was called the Rockfield Hotel in Paisley, just outside Glasgow, the local resident there was a guy called Billy Connolly, and I used to watch him every Sunday, and the two things I remember about Connolly was that blokes used to buy him pints of beer and girls used to chat him up, and I soon realised that was the only two reasons I was at college. and so, although my whole life I've never met Billy Connolly, he was a massive inspiration to me. To get off my backside and work on stories like he had.
Was it down to his banjo playing as well? I mean, he mixed music really with the banjo, didn't he? But he took that quite seriously.
Rafferty, yeah. He was in a duo called the Humble Bums with Jerry Rafferty before Baker Street,
Blimey.
And himself, a very, a bit like Steve Martin, a very accomplished banjo player,
Yeah.
But when something's offered, like Connolly, for example, you'll hear his banjo playing in the background of his soundtracks of when he's roaming around the world, and and all that.
Oh,
so
yeah, love those.
He still uses his music, the same way as I do, because I've done audio books for Bill Bryson and people like that. And so I still use my serious aspect of music, but it was Connolly, and then the realisation on the folk scene that I couldn't sing as well as McTell or Bowie and those sort of people. And so my introductions, if you like, became slightly longer each week. And all of a sudden, the Digance set moved from being 15 songs in an hour to 8 songs in an hour because the stories were longer. And that's what set me in good stead for television, because they wanted those stories.
The funnies, yeah.
And there was not really many other people doing it. On the folk scene, there was a guy called Mike Harding.
Okay.
And in Wales, there was Max Boyce. But there wasn't multitudes of us, But I couldn't be... Max Boyce was Wales, Mike Harding was Manchester. But it's very hard to be the local boy in London, because London is so cosmopolitan,
Yeah, definitely. This is really strange, but I was out on the road a couple of days ago. I went into this antique shop and I bought a Mike Harding and Max Boyce LP, believe it or not. Yeah, so I can't wait to play them. Yeah, sorry, but it's weird you mentioned them.
It's very weird, isn't it? What you could have done is gone into an antique shop and actually bought Mike Harding.
I'll have to go back next week and see if he's in the cupboards. Yeah, brilliant history though.
Yeah, but you see, it was all quite detached from TV. And so when TV came along, I was already doing gigs. So I wasn't saying I was sensational, but in the 70s, before television came along, I was your perfect support act, because I was one bloke with a guitar. Promoters picked that up very quickly, that I didn't need a drummer. There didn't need to be a change of amps and things during the interval. Sling Digance on, he's all right, he can do an hour. And there was one year in the 70s, I can't remember what year, that I did 268 supports in a year.
No.
I did, yeah, and it was like Jethro Tull, and I did Breakfast in America tour, and Supertramp, Elkie Brooks, David Essex, and Joan Armatrading Show Some Emotion tour. I did all of that.
It's so nice, not just to support comedy acts as well, but you could fit in really well with a music-based concert. And wow,
that's where the guitar playing became important, because you couldn't wander on as a working man club slouch, and entertain 5,000 people that have come to see a rock band, But the guitar saved me, if you like. And so I worked very hard at the guitar, and still do to a certain extent, but not as much as I used to.
Sure.
But that was my catalyst, if you like, to bridge the gap between people that wanted comedy and people that wanted music. Obviously, when you're playing to that many people, and like in 1980 you played to Nebworth, which was 500,000 people, I think, and I'm supporting the Beach Boys, they don't really want to hear a song about a girl who packed me up,
No.
They want to have a sing-song, and knowing that Santana are going to follow you, you've got to really have your wits about you.
And you do a lot of audience participation, don't you? You really get people enjoying themselves, laughing, but then singing at the right time and doing the chorus. I love that build-up of your act, where you actually you bring people into your act. You need the audience there, and so it's just a lovely way of performing or even warming up the evening, But you do it on your own shows, which is just stunning to watch.
I do, and that's my worry these days, is that, the thought of me playing to 4 empty seats, 2 people, 4 empty seats, 2 people, doesn't really appeal to me, because I can't break that unfortunate barrier down. The atmosphere would be so difficult.
Yeah.
Because with what you do, with your comedy, what I do with mine, it's all encompassing, Steve. And if 80% of the seats are empty, then you and Arthur and me and my guitar don't stand a chance. I mean, last week I filmed Countdown, and I haven't done Countdown for a few years, but I actually took my guitar and I've done nearly 200 countdowns, but never once ever played my guitar.
Oh, you're joking?
Countdown.
Yeah, that's nice.
So I took my guitar last week.
Did they have an audience?
No.
No. So you just got...
One
yeah.
I heard was It was up at Salford, you know, at the media centre.
Okay.
Media City in Salford. And they've just been filming Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. The oddity of that is that they need an audience because it's half the audience.
Ask the audience, okay. But they're all on the phone, yeah.
Yeah, but they've been doing 2 phone a friends and a 50-50 because they can't ask an audience anything. And with Countdown, you know, and I suppose the reason they asked me to do Countdown was because they needed people like you and me who are self-contained, who don't necessarily need a studio audience, that we can work to camera and have the confidence, you know, that we're talking to a camera as if it's our friend.
Sure, yeah.
And we can come across to a few million people, you know, and that may sound flippant from the likes of me and you that can do it, but there's an awful lot of people can't do that. They need that feed because of the timing, you know, and all that stuff. But you know, they played safe and got people that were quite capable, and I happened very luckily to be one of them. So.
But you're a favourite, aren't you, of Countdown? So they can, you know, they knew they could rely and trust on you to deliver what you needed to. And did you enjoy doing the episode? Because it must be different without the audience.
It's really bizarre because I was actually going to present Countdown, and I was going up to do my first one, which was then in Leeds. And on the very evening, I was driving up to Leeds to take on the presenting job. Richard Whiteley unfortunately passed away, and everything was cancelled, and therefore I don't think it screened for about a year or something like that, by which time, you know, I'd moved on and done other things, and it wasn't to be. But I was very close to being the presenter that followed Richard, but I think in the end it was I think Des O'Connor, if I remember rightly.
Yeah, he did it for a year or something, didn't he? I think Des, one or 2 years.
I think apart from Paul Zennin, I'm the only person that has done Countdown with every single presenter.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so you've got Richard Whiteley, Des O'Connor, Jeff Stelling, and
Des Lynam did it, didn't he?
Des Lynam, yeah, Des Lynam. Nick Hewer is doing it now, and I didn't know what to make of Nick Hewer because I've only ever seen The Apprentice twice, I think. Once to watch it and twice to actually give it a second chance to see if I could make anything of it.
Yeah.
But in actual fact, he was very personable. You know, he was great. He was a great stooge for me, and it worked really well. So, yeah, all in all, I like to feel that I'm in some way back in business, you know.
But you've written some brilliant songs, though, in the past. 7 Wonders of the World, 200 Remembers, Malcolm and Margaret. Which ones just, I mean, there's so many words in them. How do you remember them? Or will you remember them when you get back? But you've got so many classics out there. They're all on CD, aren't they, Richard? You can.
Yeah, they are, yeah. They're all somewhere out there in the ether. I got a British Academy of Composers Award way back, and it was for the publishing of my 2000th song, which sounds phenomenal. But
wow, it does.
I know, but it really wasn't, Steve, because when I started in radio, I was actually with the BBC before I joined Capital, and I was working with a guy called Bernard Braden, who was the satirical man of the time. Yeah. And I used to have to write 4 songs a week for Bernard Braden's show. The numbers really, really clocked up. They all sounded the same, all same 3 bloody chords, you know, and little ditties and so on and so on. But yeah, they did clock up, and so there's quite a few songs out there. When I did Countdown, I really put myself to the test last week.
Right.
It don't go out till the end of September, but I really put myself to the test by trying something. If you're tired and worn out, this song will rejuvenate your craving. Try a massive portion of caffeine, pantothenic acid, riboflavin, glucomonolactone, niacin, sucrose, sodium sulfate, CO2 and glucose, carbohydrate, sugar, caramel. That's what you swallow when you drink Red Bull.
Wow.
God.
That's incredible. I mean, to remember all those words and in that order as well.
It takes you 15 seconds to sing it. It took me probably an hour to read the contents on the side of the can, and then getting the things to rhyme as well, you know.
Yeah, the phrasing of it all. Yeah.
Yeah, but I wanted to do it. I wanted to be brave, you know. It would be easy just to go, oh, we'll do a bit of ragtime guitar, you know, from Scott Joplin or whatever. But that's not me. I have to be brave.
No, and on a program called Countdown, if you're going to use all of those ingredients words, it's a perfect platform for it, isn't it? To impress Susie in the corner.
Well, Susie and I go back obviously a long way, you know.
Yeah.
And that very night I told you about when Richard passed, you know.
Yeah.
It was Susie that rang me and said, where are you? I said, I'm on my way up to Leeds. And she said, well, I don't know if you know, but Richard's died. The show's been stopped.
Aww.
And I went, no, I didn't know. She said, well, on your way home, drop it in and we'll have a bottle of wine to celebrate a great man, you know, because he was a great man. He was nothing like the public, the persona, you know, because he had this bumbling, buffoony sort of image, but he was nothing like that at all. He was a really, really great bloke. And I don't really praise too many TV people, you know. There's people I've met that I don't particularly want to meet again, but he was really, really great.
I had the pleasure of meeting him once, actually. It was the audience of the Spice Girls after show party. I was booked by Andy Peters just to do some walkabout with my vent, which was not the greatest job to do, walking about with puppets for 2 hours. But Stephen Mulhern did it, and he was doing close-up magic. And Richard Whiteley came up with his wife, because it was mainly females, and David Beckham was there with Posh Spice. But I noticed Richard because he was one of the few males in the room. And I'd just done a TV talent show, and Gary Bushell had not been favoursome towards me. And but Richard Whiteley came up and paid me the nicest compliment. And I just thought, what a sweet man. He said, I thought you were great on that show last week. And and I just thought a lot of him, actually, after that. And just thought,
he was a gent, actually.
Yeah, you can tell.
A gentleman in a sort of a relatively self-important world where not many people cared about others, you know. I mean, my favourite through my TV life was Bob Monkhouse.
Yeah.
And probably my least favourite was probably Nigel Lithgow, who took over at London Weekend.
Yeah, he's over at America's Got Talent he works on now in America.
Right,
so yeah.
Well, he actually stopped my LWT shows, you know, and I remember him saying, they never told me, it's just that the recordings were cancelled and they didn't even ring me up, you know. And when I spoke to Nigel Lithgow, he said, well, the big problem is, Richard, I don't really like you. And I said, please don't worry about that, Nigel, because I don't like you either.
Blimey.
And that was my closure at London Weekend Television.
That's almost like, you know, when Benny Hill was just dropped, and he's devastated, he was. But how can they not tell people that as fronting them shows and bringing in the audiences? But to say that to your face, I mean, it's probably best he does say it to your face, because talking behind someone's back in this business, we don't want that anymore, you know. It's you hear it too much. But what a horrible thing. How can someone say that?
Because they're important, and they like to remind you they're more important than you are, to which I would have said, well, have you got a BAFTA nomination, you know, hanging on your mantelpiece, you know, and this, that and the other. But
I'm sorry to hear that.
It was sort of time when that happened. It was a bit of a kick, you know, and I carried on doing television for a little while, just as a guest, really, on shows. And it was a woman in the Princess Theatre, Clacton, who changed my whole direction. I don't know who she was, not a clue, but she was at the stage door, and she waiting to get what was then a cassette signed, you know. And I said, did you enjoy the show? She said, yes. I didn't know you played the guitar. I thought you just did poems and stuff. And when I drove home down the A12, you know, I did that whole dreadful A12 that is never ending. It's like spaghetti. You know?
I never enjoy that road. No, there's nothing enjoyable about it. Yeah.
I spent the whole journey through Essex saying to myself, Richard, if one person thinks that you don't play the guitar, you're getting it wrong, mate. Stop doing it. And whoever that woman was, I don't have a clue, she made me stop television abruptly. I said, I will do no more. I will just go on tour. And luckily I had the name to sell a few tickets, you know.
Yeah.
And basically get back to what I wanted to be. So I built a recording studio because I don't like, you know, going into London and having a sound engineer who's speaking to his bird on his mobile, you know. And so I built a studio and I started doing soundtrack music, and that was quite successful. But I felt very comfortable because I was back where it all began, if you like, you know, back in the days of a student with Billy Connolly and whatever. I'd returned, if that's the right term, to what I set out to do in the first place. So, talk about full circle.
Oh, it's amazing though. But you just keep going in this business, and if something stops, you just find that it's just opening up another path for you, isn't it? Really, and you'll always do this if it's in your blood. But you would.
I think we have to.
You'll find another. You've got to do what you got to do. But at the moment, I'm still a ventriloquist. I'm still talking to myself, which.
Yeah, but I wanted to do my bit. Although I'm quite lucky because of royalties, you know, and they sort of flood through from not in a massive J.K. Rowling sense, but you know,
sure.
they trickle in. And you know, I have a book called The Animal Alphabet, which was originally a BBC series that is a book that is a teaching aid all around the world. So you know, that option is taken up every year, and so you know,
brilliant. It's in different languages as well. Yeah, that's.
Yeah, but I'm not one of the real skim people, luckily.
Yeah.
I wanted to do my bit, and I actually applied, would you believe, for a delivery driver's job at Tesco's, and I failed 3 times because I didn't have a clean driving licence.
Wow,
And I couldn't believe
that's
it. I thought,
you can't get a job in Tesco's. Yeah.
You know, you got this bloke who's I just wanted to do something, Steve. I didn't want to sit at home feeling sorry for myself, you know.
Yeah, sure.
And I thought, well, let's do something. I used to be an ambulance driver before I, you know, went professional. So, you know, I knew the thing about driving for the public, and I thought, I'll give it a go. I couldn't get a job.
Isn't that crazy?
Now that, you know, you've got actors and actresses who, in bad times, would get a job as a waitress or work in a pub, but of course they can't do that either. And so there are so many people in entertainment who are absolutely at their wits' end, you know.
I know, yeah. I used to work at the London Palladium as an usher when I was 20, and they were singers, dancers, actors. I was the only ventriloquist there, but they were all waiting for the next audition, you know. But I mean, now obviously the theatres are closed, so where are those singers and dancers and actors? It's so sad that we're just waiting for the venues to open again.
Oh, conversational.
I mean, what are all the sea celebrities doing? Now, I saw one of your songs recently about singing about sea celebrities. They're out of work as well. There's no reality TV show at the moment, but not only is it very hilarious, but I could sit there and listen to another 200 verses of that song. It's brilliant. It's mainly about Peter Andre, wasn't it? And it's such a great take on the reality people.
Reality TV, you're talking to the wrong bloke. Particularly, you know, you and I learned our trade to do what we do.
Yeah.
And when we go on TV, we do what we're hopefully good at. I'm not one of these people that just wants to stand there and smile and eat cockroaches, you know, and all that stuff. And even though, you know, Pasquale went on there, you know, and I said, Joe, you know, how did you do it? And he was very clever because he befriended a couple of llamas or whatever they were, you know, didn't have to get into all the arguments and tangles that were going on.
Yeah, just spitting at each other.
Yeah, both. But I didn't want to be. I don't want to lay in a coffin with rats. Thank you very much. You know, I'd rather get my guitar out and sing a song. And the song you're talking about was actually "Who is Peter Andre? What does Peter Andre do?"
Okay.
Who is Peter Andre? I haven't got a clue. Of course, I knew who he was.
Yeah.
But you know, to stretch himself to all sorts of, you know, spokes from the middle of the wheel to be all these other things. It's not me, and you actually touched it half an hour ago when you said the best time of TV was definitely the 70s, 80s, 90s. For me, the 80s and 90s, when the filthy word was around called variety. But it is a filthy word today, which TV executives who are 28 years old and have come out of uni, they don't know what variety is. They've never witnessed it, they weren't around, and it makes someone of my age sound really bigoted and whatever. But I can tell you that I would love variety to return to television as we know it. Whether it will or not, with reality being so lucrative with phone calls and things like that, I'm not sure that variety as we know will return, and I'm cynical, but only with a smile, because I know my mates like Steve Hewlett, they feel the same as me, that when you get Ant and Dec, for example, who have won TV Presenters of the Year for 16 years running, including 1 year when Ant didn't do anything because he was sorting himself out and he wasn't on telly once. Yeah. You just find it cynical, but that's the way it is now. It's a different industry. It's a bit like football. When I played for the school, I played football. It's a big business now. It's not the same as it was when I played football as a kid. And I say the same with television. Television today is not the same as it was when I was doing 4 nights a week at one point, on TV. And I was having to write it all, coming up with fresh stuff, and being proud of what I've done, and I do watch some of the junk that's around. There's good stuff as well.
There's nowhere to go. I mean, if obviously I gave into the Britain's Got Talent thing in 2013, they'd asked me for 7 years. Thank you, but it's like there is nowhere for me to showcase my talent. I had to just and do my best on that show, and so coming out the other end, you got to do what you got to do. But you gave me a chance back in 2004 with the new variety show, the cable TV show, and it was just so nice to work with you on it and see the variety, and you really did try to bring variety back, Richard. You can tell that you're passionate about helping artists in your business, musicians and comedians and variety acts, and so I thank you and applaud you for what you were doing back then. And it's no problem,
but I tell you, if you're a small fish, the big fish come and eat all the food, and the little fish. And they eat the little fish's food as well. And I couldn't possibly fight against the Granadas of the world,
Ice and teeth.
When you say that you had to bite the bullet and do, Britain's Got Talent and things, I don't think that's true. I think you took the circumstance and the time and the situation and used it, which is what all entertainers would do. If you were on my show, or if I had a show through the 80s, Steve would have been on as an entertainer, not as a contestant. But it wasn't the same when you went on Britain's Got Talent. You had to find those outlets because no one else would give you those outlets unless you found them for yourself. So you didn't really have a lot of choice. The only choice I had was to not get totally absorbed into the people in television who I didn't quite trust and didn't particularly get on with, but made my own little route, as I said earlier. But needs be. I mean, I did Countdown last week because it's good exposure for me, and I've got a book out. 4 months lost.
It's brilliant to come up with things when you're stuck in a situation like this. And I was going to bring up your book next, 4 Months Lost. What is the premise of this book? Because it sounds like you've filled in those 4 months writing this book about this time.
Do you know what? That's exactly what I did. An hour and a half. I started because I don't know about you, but my body clock changed. And all of a sudden, instead of driving home at 2:00 in the morning and meeting Steve Hewlett at the
that garage. I remember meeting you at the services.
On the A1. I'm suddenly getting tired at like 10:30, and I'm just thinking, what's going on? I'd just come off stage, you know. But on the upside of that, I was seeing, admittedly, you know, I've been through the kids thing like yourself and getting up, but in the main, I hadn't seen much of 6:30 in the morning, and I was starting to really enjoy it, watching the sun come up, you know.
I love the mornings,
Things that I hadn't done for years because of touring and getting home late, sleeping till 9 o'clock or whatever, you know.
Yeah, you didn't know there was 2 6:30s in one day. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. And all of a sudden, I'm thinking, I've got to do something, so I worked from 7:30 every single morning till 9 o'clock. I did an hour and a half every single day and wrote that book. And it was basically all about how it used to be, even going shopping, you know, and having lists that your mum gave you, you know, and knowing the butcher and going in the chemist and buying just the way it was compared to the way it is.
Yeah, it seems so simple, doesn't it? But now it's not. It just seems like, did we take that for granted 5-6 months ago? Things
I don't know.
changed.
I think we had every right to take it for granted because we didn't know this lot was going to come and smack us in the face. You know?
No.
When you write it in words on your computer, it does make you sort of, that's what we used to do.
Yeah.
And it's almost become almost a history lesson about yourself, you know.
So is this about yourself then, or is it just about the moments, about what we used to do, and or is it about you in that everyday life before COVID happened?
Well, it's a bit like the 200 Remembers. It's about me that I can share with you.
Yeah.
And you go, oh, yeah, I did that. You know, I mean, I'm old enough to remember. I'm not sure you are, Steve, but I'm old enough to remember when we used to go to the fish and chip shop, the fish and chips were wrapped in newspaper.
Oh, I do remember. And it smelt better as well, didn't it? The vinegar in there.
And sometimes, you know, when you got a piece of cod home, you know, there'd be an imprint of Bobby Charlton's face on his arse, you know.
I wouldn't mind that if they wrapped it in page 3. I wouldn't mind that as much, really. When I was
page 3.
See, I do remember. I'm older than you think.
How old are you?
I'm 45 now.
Wow.
Yeah, you probably won't remember this, but I was 19 and I worked on the Isle of Wight, and my nights off was Sunday, and I knew that there was shows on every Sunday at Sandown Theatre. And I know you did, because I came down and I booked tickets on my day off to go and see Stan Boardman. I went to see Jimmy Tarbuck with Neville King and Kenny Lynch, and you were I'd done 3 that season, and you were the 3rd. I've got a picture of you when I was 19, and you were so nice to me. You had a couple of little words. I told you what I wanted to do, and you were so sweet. And then I met you a few more years after that. And that was brilliant. I bought one of your poems and limericks books. I think I've still got that, which you signed to me. Yeah, they were good days in the old 90s, weren't they? You've done so many books, Richard, and can you tell me a bit more about the 100 Strangest Shows? Because I think what is good about this time is that we can reminisce about the time before, and your books are really good to take people's minds off what's going on. So 100 Strangest Shows, can you tell us one of those stories in that?
I'll tell you the first one, because it had to be the first one. Okay. Which was a folk club called The Hole in the Wall in Chichester in Sussex. And I got there. My fee at the time was £5, and I got there. And folk clubs normally in a pub, back room or upstairs, and they normally the turn, top of the bill would go on about 9 o'clock. 8 o'clock you'd have what they call floor singers or open mics, as they know them now. And anyway, got to 8 o'clock and the bloke said, would you like to come through? And I said, what time am I on? He said, 9 o'clock. And I went, I'll just get myself a beer and I'll come through. He said, would you mind coming in now? And I went, yeah, okay. So I went into this back room of this place in Chichester, and the bloke walked on stage. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Chichester Folk Club. I was the only one there, Steve. There was no one else in the room. No. Nobody. Wow. And I'm leaning with my elbows on a bar at the back that was closed, and he's up on the stage, and I said, "Excuse me, there's no one here." And he went, "Club policy, Richard, we always start on time, otherwise people come later and later." And I said, "Yeah, but there's no one here to know that you started on time." You know? Anyway, he proceeded to sing for an hour, all bloody chorus songs, so I had to join in, and he was crap, and so I sang along for an hour. And he said, "Anyway, without any further ado, I'm sorry there's not more people here, Richard, but legend, Richard Digance." And I walked all the way down this empty room. He came off the stage and sat at the front and clapped me. And I did an hour, and I had to have the money. You know, that was the thing. I was broke.
Yeah.
And, you know, £5 then was probably the equivalent of about 50 or 60 quid now.
Yeah.
And so I had to do it. You know, I wasn't in a position to go, "Oh, look, just forget it, mate." Anyway, I did an hour, and he got up and said, "Thank you, Richard. I really, really enjoyed that." And as I say, it's a shame there weren't more people. But anyway, now for the bad news, as if there could be anything worse. He said, "I've cancelled the raffle." I was the only person who could win, and he cancelled it. And that has to go down as a strange gig, doesn't it?
Yeah, did you get paid?
Yeah, it got me £5.
Oh, good. You could have bought some raffle tickets.
But I hasten to add, though, that he promised he'd book me back. He never has. Yeah, I'm still waiting. Yeah, rate's gone up, but, you know, it's really weird that whole folk thing was built on small numbers, you know.
Yeah.
A good-sized folk club when I started was 40 or 50 people, you know, but they were all music people, you know. A lot of them played guitar, so you couldn't be a slouch, you know. You had to sort of be able to play as well. And that set me in a good stead. So, well, that's a funny story. It really isn't that bizarre compared to what the folk thing was in those days. You know?
No, it's actually a true fact. So did folk clubs have their own clubs, or were they actually just one night in a social club or something, or were they pubs? Were just theme nights?
No, they weren't theme nights. No, they were in different rooms in pubs.
Okay.
So they'd be upstairs.
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
in what old pubs had rooms for weddings, didn't they, and things
Yes.
like that.
Yeah.
Or a back room. A lot of rooms had skittles, you know, in back rooms.
I remember them. Yeah, like
Yeah,
skittle
and there'd be a
lanes.
folk club in a skittle alley where you'd have 3 seats going back about 200 yards. You know.
Yeah, and you know if you're bad because they start bowling towards you and you need to get out the way. So it's
Yeah, that's right. With cannonballs. But I think having your fair share of bummers makes you. Oscar Wilde said, you know, you can't possibly know about success until you've tasted failure. And
True,
and,
yeah.
you know, Oscar was absolutely right. You know, you don't know what a good gig is until you've had a fair few bad ones. And I certainly have my fair share of them, and I'm sure you have. And that's what I don't quite get about the X Factor type shows, is because they haven't done what you and I have done, and people like us. They haven't done their apprenticeship.
the
They haven't
grafting.
learned
Yeah.
how to work a bloody tough audience, you know, so that a nice audience is a blessing, and we can really go to town with them, you know. This whole vision of being a star from one TV appearance is a little bit misleading, but that being what it is, it's not really that bothers me. It's the fact that I don't think the panel should be more famous than the performer.
No. Sadly, it is about that, isn't it?
It is, and it's the wrong way round. And also, one crippling sentence can crucify someone's dream. And I really, really don't like that. You know, to say you're useless, you know, get out, is a horrible thing, and it shatters confidence and self-ego. And if you haven't got an ego and a confidence, you cannot perform. And those judges can kill people off just like that, you know, literally just like that. Just like that.
No, it's really sad to see that, isn't it? And no, especially when you see a good one and they crush them there and then, and you're watching these auditions, and it's like it's crushing to watch. Actually, it's like, because you don't know how long they've been waiting for this dream moment. You know.
No, I remember a guy called Steve Womack, and he came from.
Steve's great. I've worked with Steve.
Yeah, and he went on New Faces, and Nina Mishgal said to him, "You sound like Richard Digance," and as far as I'm concerned, one Richard Digance is one too many.
Oh wow.
And I actually got slagged off for not even being on the show.
That's how good you are. You don't have to be there to be buzzed off.
Is that a pinnacle?
You can claim it as a pinnacle, but I mean, nice to have a name check, isn't it? But there's no need for that.
I don't like it, Steve.
No,
it's harsh, you know.
And Steve's a great act. It's good as a compliment, you know, if he sounds like you, but he's a great act as well, you know, and it's sad to hear that.
Yeah, he had a great song called The Romans and the Brits. I remember it really, really well, and he was very accomplished. And all he was trying to do was stretch himself, you know, into a bigger media world, if you like. And they shot him down just like that in front of millions of people, and it's just not acceptable in my book. You know, it might suit others, but it certainly don't suit me, you know. And that's why I shun it, you know. And when that guy Steve Hewlett went on Britain's Got Talent, I was so chuffed, and I just thought, don't spit him out, don't, because I know what Steve can do.
I knew it was a risk. I was worried about them spitting me out, or just one buzz could have changed everything about my appearance on it. You know when you're a pro and you go in there, okay, I've got 3 minutes, surely it can't go wrong. But I have seen mates of mine, I've seen it go wrong because of the editing of that type of show. And they edited my bit from 6 minutes at the Palladium down to 20 seconds. And it could have gone wrong. They could have not shown me at all. I've known of acts that have stormed it and they've just not put them on the live shows. So it's kind of difficult to get across your act, you know, if they're going to edit. But I was one of the lucky ones, though, and I did have a fantastic time on it, and they were all really good to me. So
I think what the public don't know is that people way above us dominate our careers to an extent, whereby what happened with me with Lithgow, you know, is you can be brilliant, like you were just saying, but if someone's had a rotten day or a row with their missus and things, they can crucify you and end your career. And that is not right, you know, not in my book. It's not right. And so I think, really, yes, there were the talent shows, and a lot of people, Victoria Wood came through a talent show. Yeah. You know, and Davidson and various people of that time.
Lenny Henry, yeah.
Yeah. And I don't think, I might be wrong, but I don't think Jim Davidson won New Faces. I think he came second to, I don't know, Barrymore or something like that.
Yeah.
But I saw Joe Pasquale on New Faces, and I rang my manager at the time and said, I want him on my tour.
Oh, wow.
And
87, that?
Yeah, so Joe came and supported me. And my first night was at the Assembly Rooms in Derby, and he went down better than me, and I thought, sod this, I'm at a right old clanger here. But we became massive friends, you know, and it was great. But so it does have its pluses. If someone like me is about to do a British tour and I see someone on telly and I just think, oh wow, you know, that'd be great.
Yeah,
it can work in your favour, but
that's nice.
At the hands of those judges, it's scary, and it's not really the route I took. So maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm looking at it as a punter almost, you know. But
no, it's brilliant to see, because what you did, you worked your way up, and Jim Davidson thankfully plucked you and put you into the television, platform, which worked for you, and it worked in a brilliant way. And it's good you didn't have to do a talent show to prove your talent, you know, which was really nice. It's nice to hear that story. Really
more
nice.
Importantly than any of that, have you still got your red shirt?
I was just, you know what? It's literally 60 seconds ago, I was thinking I must tell him about the red shirt. I can go and grab it now for you, but you can't see it because it's audio. But I'll get a picture of me holding it and I'll send it to you on the phone after. But yes, I have. I can't can't throw it away. And it's got your initials RD in it, which I always said Regis Digest sent me this.
No, I nicked it off Robin Day.
Did you really?
No.
Yeah, so I still have that shirt. I can't, because after I've worn shirts and stuff for a few years, I just put them in charity, you know, but I can't get rid of that shirt. And I've worn it at only Christmas gigs. I wore it at Thursford that year.
So let's tell them what happened. So we're playing in Norfolk. We're playing this weird Christmas extravaganza with a Wurlitzer organ and dancers and reindeer.
Yeah,
and Father Christmas.
Thursford Spectacular. It's great. And you were out in the foyer selling your books, weren't you?
Yeah, Father Christmas's Journey, yeah. And anyway, I meet up again with Steve Hewlett. I hadn't seen him for a while. And he says to me, I should be wearing something red because it's Christmas, you know, and it's Father Christmas and all that stuff, and I ain't got nothing.
I think I had that classic. Where'd you get your shirt? Was it? That was the hint,
Yeah,
wasn't it?
probably. Where did you get that shirt? And
It's just the
and
perfect
so
red.
I took my red shirt off and I gave it to this Ven. And from that gig onwards, from what I've read in all the autobiographies of people that have mentioned you, that was the change of your career, wasn't it?
It's the lucky charm.
That red shirt was when people realised you were actually turning professional and everything. So I'm honoured.
Yeah, I wore it when I worked with Archie Andrews, BGT. I wore it in the dressing room when I met Nina. When I met Nina, and on the honeymoon, it was always wear the red shirt, and so it's still there. It's still there. It's a very nice story, that actually. I like that. And I hosted Thursford, actually. I went back last year to host it, and this year is the first year they're not going ahead for obvious reasons. But I'm so glad I got in there and hosted 7 weeks again last Christmas. It was brilliant to be back.
Yeah, but you're quite big up there, aren't you? With
Chroma and
and whatever, you know.
Yeah.
Because I do the Chroma Festival every year, and your mush is always in the box office. You know?
Is it? They just invited me to do Chroma Festival next year. Actually, they asked me this year. I couldn't do it, and then whatever I was doing was cancelled anyway. But they asked if I do 2021. So I mean, it'd be lovely to see you up there if that's all back on.
Yeah, it's nice. I love Chroma. It's like what happened to time? And I always say about Chroma, it's the closest I've become to being an international star. Because I think it's closer to Norway than it is to my house.
I think it's true. I do love going back there, and my latest tour was moved from this year to next April. But they just released a couple of dates. Actually, they're doing about 12 shows, and I'm doing one of them at the end of this month. And yeah, they can only fit 100 people in there with the distancing, but I'm doing it because I love the place. They haven't got any money, you know. It's a little bit of money, but it'll pay the petrol, and I'll just go there and be in Chroma for one night. So
yeah, I think in a way, you know, we've got to stop all of us the arrogance of having a fee.
Yeah.
And go, do you know what? I'll come and do it as long as I'm sorted in some way, shape, or form. You know,
yeah.
I'll turn up. You know, because that's the big fear for all these places.
Save a venue.
Yeah, and I mentioned earlier, you know, it's all very well for Lloyd Webber going, well, you know, I decided to open. Yeah, but your life didn't depend on it, mate, you know. And some of these smaller venues, they need the likes of us to bend and go, we'll come, we'll do it, you know, and hopefully, you know, things will pick up and we'll all be back to some sort of normality, you know. But if we don't bend and help these venues, there was a thing I read the other day that 17%, I think it is, well, I know it is, 17% of venues closed at the moment will not reopen. And
wow.
I think that's horrific, you know. That's not 3 weeks of isolation, you know, that's careers, jobs, staffing, you know, and even if you take watching a football match on telly, there's no bar, there's no restaurants, there's no shops outside where people are selling scarves and bottles of water or whatever, you know, it goes down the line, doesn't it?
It dominoes into so many businesses,
it
you
does.
know, yeah.
They're closures, you know, and And I know football is saying that they're going to open next season with a 20%. That seems to be the magical word that the government keeps throwing at us.
Yeah.
But, what about the little bloke that sells the hot dogs, the bloke who can't get help from the government or anything?
Yeah.
I don't think he will return. And therefore, gone are the days when I can think back with my dad taking me to the football and buying me a burger, and a cup of coffee. I don't think younger people are going to see that, and I think that's really sad. I'm glad my youngest daughter literally just got her assessment after 4 years at university, and she was 2 weeks from passing, and the blockade came in, and she was absolutely petrified, Steve, that 4 years wasted. But luckily she got assessed, and she's now a teacher.
Great. Oh, brilliant. Good.
Starts September the 1st. But what about these poor kids who flummoxed about their A-levels, all because some idiot comes up with some stupid idea about your postcode being relevant to how clever you are. And you just think, really? Is this the world I'm living in?
Yeah.
To be honest, I'm glad I did live through the 80s and 90s and did my bit on telly, I don't understand what's going on right now.
No, you've had some brilliant decades out there. I'm sitting here now just looking out the window and watching 2 squirrels just eat from trees. It's just beautiful just to see a bit of nature and then think, there's some normal things that are still going on out there, just the simplicity of watching 2 squirrels have their lunch on a tree brunch.
I'm quite lucky because I've got a nice big garden, and one of the nice facts is the ozone layer is closed, and another nice fact is there's no air pollution like it was. It's down like 87% or something ridiculous.
Yeah.
And all these little things flying about as I'm looking out of my window, they don't know about all this. They don't know all about the rules and regulations of life. They're just getting on. And it makes you realise, we may think we're clever. We may think we're the bullies of nature. But in actual fact, I think nature's got one over on us.
I think they do. Nature wins, doesn't it? Eyes and teeth. In this time, you as a comedy and guitar legend, you always find something different to do. Now you're such a great painter. I've just looked at your paintings on your website, and I love how you've added some humour into it. Like the Choral Society is really nice with the sponges gag, and the community spirit, which could
I'll send you one.
That could have a new title, maybe social distancing. I just see these families in these blocks, but I love your paintings.
You need a painting to stick on eBay, I know that, and I'll get one to you, because it's important your little dummies eat, isn't it?
The 100 Strangest book, the shows that you've done, that I love the first story, so the rest of them must follow really nicely. 4 Months Lost.
99, in fact.
Can you only get them through yourself, or can you get these on Amazon, your books?
No, that comes through us lot. We do it all ourselves because the publishers take like 50%, and pay you in 2 years' time.
Yeah, well, I'll get your link for your website and get that shared and mention your books because they sound brilliant, and I've read your books before. They're great.
Yeah, I mean the big problem, really, is that it's merchandise for me. But if I'm not doing shows, I'm sitting with a garage full of books.
Yeah.
See, I don't know with the distancing. I don't know whether I can sell merchandise. Do I stand by a table with gloves on? Do I put a mask on? Do I not bother? Do I actually have the bravery to go out and stand in front of all these people? I don't really know. But what I do know is I've got loads of books. Loads of CDs and stuff like that, which were going fine, but they've become a little bit of a redundancy in my sort of business, if you like,
Yeah, well, after a live show, people like to take something away with them, don't they?
They do, yeah. They're souvenirs. I mean, people don't buy CDs anymore, but they do if they see them at a gig, because it is a souvenir of the evening. It's the same as a brochure.
Yeah.
And I sell a lot of CDs, but I haven't sold a CD since February the 12th, I think, something like that. Because online, it's not the same thing. They want to meet you, they want you to sign it, and whatever it, the whole structure of meeting a performer is all about. But that's not with me at the moment. And,
Yeah, you give these opportunities. So these you can make personalised CDs, which is a lovely idea, where you can put their name on it, and you can put the songs on that they choose and stuff. That's a lovely personalised idea.
Yeah, I just thought it was something different,
It is.
And at the moment, I'm working with a talking dog. He's massive in Ireland. He's called Wee Alfie.
Oh, right.
Yeah, he's been on the national news and BBC and everything. And,
Is he a real dog or is he a puppet?
No, he's a talking dog. You can check him out.
Okay, I will.
And I'm doing a Christmas album with him, doing all the music for him and stuff, just because it's something totally different. And he comes from Armagh, over in NI, and Steve is massive in Ireland.
Is he? Wow.
Completely unknown over here. And I'm loving every minute of it, playing in the bleak midwinter, and he's going to sing it, and all that stuff. And it's just something different, and that's what all of us are trying to find, that route. You finishing your book or writing songs, we're all trying to find that route that will take us to the next stage of our creativity, if you like, and it's not easy. And if you're just a stand-up comic who nicks jokes from other people have done, then you must be tearing your hair out, but you have to be creative. That's what we were put on the planet for, and when it all goes against you like it is at the moment, you find ways of being creative like you have and like I have, mainly because in the bluntest possible way, we have no choice.
Yeah, that's true. And if the younger generation haven't seen your work yet, how would you introduce them to them first? Through your books, CDs, YouTube clips, or your art, or VIP nights at your house? Looks brilliant. Is that something?
Oh, they work, yeah.
Is this something that's still going ahead? And can I plug that? Because I need to get some friends together and come, because it looks brilliant.
Yeah, we can distance people, and it's only 20 people. It's very, very intimate.
Yeah.
And again, they turn up, they choose what songs they want me to sing. We lay food on and wine. And I've built a gallery in my garden, which seats comfortably with distance 20 people, which is quite lucky.
Yeah.
And I do my art exhibitions there and so on. And I just thought, I've got this space, and people love to meet you, don't they? And the one thing that's certain with a VIP night like that is you don't get people who, I don't really like him very much, because
they want to be there. Yeah.
Yeah. If they don't like you, they won't come. And so they're really brilliant nights. I don't know if you've even thought about doing that, but it really works.
I could do, but we can only get 2 people on our couch, and the kids will probably be sat there playing with their Lego, so it's going to be more tricky. But I mean, we're in a flat at the moment. We're in between getting a house, and so we're being stuck in this flat up in here in the heat. But I love that idea, Richard, what you're doing. I mean, it wouldn't be a bad idea to actually film part of it for a promo to, for the next 6 months going on. You probably couldn't do it out in the cold in the winter, but the next 4 months, just do a little promo of the next one and send it out, because I'm going to try and get some friends to come along. Does all the 20 people have to know each other, or can you buy it in groups?
No, they don't know. A lot of some people come on their own.
Oh, brilliant. I'm definitely going to look that up. That's brilliant.
Usually couples, to be honest, or more, where a couple of couples get in a car and come over,
Yeah, it's like a date night. It's nice.
Yeah, and it's in Salisbury, which is a nice place to be, well, till the Russians turn up, but, Salisbury's a very hippie place, it's a city, but it's really a big town, and it's got loads and loads of arty shops and music and buskers and everything I love, I sort of look at it as a Covent Garden out in the countryside,
Oh, it's nice. It's a nice part of the country.
But you should come over anyway, just come and have a nice evening, listen to some music.
No, we'd love to.
Have a
Seriously,
guitar
gonna.
lesson.
Yes, I need to look at your lessons properly. I've got it next to me, but to be honest, I've done the first 2 lessons and I just haven't stopped being creative, like you say, and so I need to pick it back up again. But I want to be able to say Richard Digance taught me guitar. Mate, thank you so much for your time, and I really appreciate it. If I was to remember 200 things in my life, Richard Digance bringing me laughter and kindness will be on that list.
Oh, bless you.
Ho, 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 ho.
Thanks to Richard Digance for his time and interest in stories. He's a brilliant entertainer. Now, if you want a personalised CD, signed book or books, and there's many out there, or if you just want to take a loved one or friend in your bubble to his garden show, or check out where his next live theatre show is touring, then take a look at his website with all the details at richarddigance.com. You can also find him on Facebook. Today's comedy quote comes from Steve Martin. What is comedy? Comedy is the art of making people laugh without making them puke. Thanks for listening to 12 Days of Podcasts, formerly known as Eyes and Teeth, but this season it's called Eyes and Tinsel, with 12 special guests across December 2020 to bring some special joy in this awful situation we find ourselves in. Eyes and Teeth is written, produced and hosted by Steve Hewlett. Digital images created by Nina Hewlett. Vocals by Nina, Lola and Larissa Hewlett, and additional vocals by Rich T. The theme music and jingles are all produced and performed at Kevin Dean Studios by the man himself. Check out the next edition, number 7, to find out who my next guest is on Eyes and Tinsel.
Ho, 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 ho. Merry Christmas.